Hello Sharks, I am Jonathan Little for PokerCoaching.com, here today with a hand from the $10,000 buy-in GG Super Millions featuring the player who just may be my favorite poker player in the world. Do you know who it is? It is Joao Vieria. I love Joao Vieria. Here he is coming in very close to last in chips. As you can see the payouts here. We've discussed this thoroughly, that GG has a very flat payout structure, and that results in the players needing to be a little bit tight. Sometimes you do see some very shallow stacks just hanging around, especially at the beginning of the final table. Let's take a look at the people involved. There's Joao. Oh my goodness, I love playing with him. He is a lot of fun. As you can see, a gigantic amount of winnings just on GG Poker, 6.2 million, a bunch in live poker, #1 in Portugal. He absolutely crushes it. He has been around for forever. He is always in like the top 5 or 10 online poker players in the world. He is a super duper crusher, and he is a lot of fun. His opponent, someone who has given me trouble at the poker table, Sam Greenwood. I was playing a tournament, and I think I took second place. He took third. So it worked out okay for me, where we were playing a $10,000 buy-in tournament in the Caribbean, but he plays great. Very, very good, strong, world-class player. As you can see here, $22 million in live tournament earnings. Currently number 11 in live poker tournaments. Also $5 million in cashes on GG. Interesting, 11.8% cash rate when they pay about 13, 14, 15% of the field. So he actually cashes perhaps a little bit less often than he should if he was, the break-even type of player. But he wins way more often than not, as you see here. First, fourth, first, right? Lots and lots and lots of big scores for Sam Greenwood. He is a very, very, very difficult poker player to play against, very well studied. He will put you in very tough spots, especially from a GTO point of view. So let's take a look at this hand. Here we are playing 25,000, 50,000. Antonio here has a weak hand. I made it a little bit bigger so we could see this just a little bit better. Okay, let's take a look. We have Joao in the big blind with a whopping 10 big blinds. That's not where you want to be. Are there any other short stacks? Only Michael Adamo with 20 big blinds. Everybody else is pretty deep stacked. So let's take a look at this. Notice Sam Greenwood is the chip leader. When you are the chip leader in a tournament with a relatively flat payout structure, given all of your opponents are highly incentivized to play tightly because they just want to collect an additional payout jump, that should result in you raising substantially wider than normal. When your opponent should be tight, you usually in turn should be quite loose. And that will make this ace-3 offsuit under the gun, which is normally a trivially easy fold, a hand that you can conceivably raise, especially if you are aware that your opponents are aware of the payout implications. I know some of you in the YouTube comment section have said, if it's a flat structure, shouldn't you just try to win? No, because you got to think about the extremes here, right? Say it's a winner-take-all tournament. Then there is no incentive to survive, right? Because let's say you can get heads up with 1/10 of the chips. It's not all that good of a deal for you because you're going to lose, 90-ish% of the time, right? Whereas, let's say second place paid you some money. That's clearly way better than if it's winner-take-all. Let's say you're playing a tournament where they pay out half of the players in the tournament instead of 15% of the field. Then you should play just like really tight and collect your free min cash, right? So as the structure pays out more people and as the difference between the places on the payout ladder is smaller, that's going to result in you needing to be more concerned with not going broke, especially when you are a shallow or medium stack. Because of that, that's going to allow the big stack to get pretty active and aggressive. So Sam Greenwood, probably going to raise it up here. Sam plays on the more loose, aggressive side, I think, in terms of like pushing the boundaries. If I had to imagine, he's using his genius computer solver brain, and probably if there's a spot where you're supposed to raise like 60% of the time, he may be raising it 100%, which, to be fair, is probably fine, because if your opponents are going to overfold, you definitely want to be blasting them. Over to Joao in the big blind. If you know your opponent's opening pretty wide, I think you just have to defend here. You don't love defending the ace-x offsuit against early position raisers, because if you think about the early position raising ranges, those should be a lot of good, big, high cards, but Joao's aware that Sam's going to be opening pretty wide here, so I think you can certainly justify defending. You don't want to go all in here, because if you go all in, Sam's going to call with all of his good hands, and that's going to be really bad for your ace and your 2. If you thought Sam was on the tight side, though, or if like this was a medium stack raising, I definitely think folding could be viable. And you may look at this and say, well, he only has 10 big blinds, right? Shouldn't he just be trying to gamble? But again, no, there is an incentive for him to just kind of hang out. And I realize all the other players are not going to be like insane going all in with any 2 cards or whatever, but sometimes one of them's going to get kings and the other one's going to get queens, and they're going to get it all in, and one of them's going to go broke, and you're going to collect a free payout jump. So there definitely is merit in hanging out in Joao's scenario. So he does call, which I think is fine. Looks like a pretty nice spot to not fold. Joao checks as he should do with his entire range here, and Sam goes for a minimum bet. This may be surprising to some people, but whenever you are playing very shallow stacked, you're going to find that on these like ace-high type boards, you often do want to go very small. When the other 2 cards are like kind of connected, sometimes you go a little bit bigger, but as stacks get very shallow, you essentially want to just make a lot of cheap bluffs, because right here, the minimum defense frequency for Joao is really, really high. Obviously, he's going to be overfolding compared to that because of the payout implications, him being out of position, he's going to realize his equity poorly, etc. But this is a spot where tiny bets are very, very nice, because imagine Sam can open it up with like 10-8 suited here and minimum bet and get him off of king high, right? That's clearly a very, very good success. Also, Zhao's going to shove a lot of his good aces pre-flop. So this is a scenario where he doesn't really have all that many good hands on this board. So this is a spot where you do want to be continuation betting minimum when you are playing against shallow stacks in this scenario. We discussed this thoroughly at pokercoaching.com in my tournament masterclass. Make sure you check it out. All right, what does Zhao do? Seems like an easy spot to call. Some people think they should shove it all in here, but I think that'd be a pretty big error, because when we shove here, Sam's going to fold out all of his garbage, right? Like 10-8 of diamonds. You really want him in with the 10-8 of diamonds when you have the ace. So I think this is a very, very nice spot to call, just to give Sam every possible opportunity to bluff it off. Like, I'm not trying to fold this ace 2 here. Zhao gives it some thought. They give you a pretty long time bank on GG. Turn is now the 5. And this is a fun spot, because from a GTO point of view, the times you want to lead are when you have a lot of very, very premium hands and your opponent has almost none. And here, Zhao actually does have a decent amount of 5s. He's going to play all the low connected 5s, like 7-5, 6-5, 5-4, I have to presume. He's going to play all the suited 5s, right? And Sam may have more than he normally would under the gun, because he may just raise like queen 5 suited under the gun for all I know, given he's the big stack, but he doesn't have all the 5s, right? That said, he does have a lot of aces. So, and it's an interesting scenario, because if Zhao checks, is Sam going to bluff all that often on this turn 5? Because now if Zhao does have an ace, he's just not folding. If he has a 5, he's not folding. If he has a 9, he's not folding. So it's an interesting scenario where I got to imagine from a GTO point of view, you do want to lead here sometimes. When you do lead, you're going to want to be leading basically minimum. Because again, it's kind of similar to the spot that Sam was in on the flop. You now have a pretty big advantage, and your opponent's just going to overfold in general. This is also a nice spot to lead with some just like random backdoor draws that you have. Like say Zhao did have like, I don't even know, 10-8 of clubs. Maybe that's a hand you could go for a minimum bet, and if Sam folds, that's clearly a gigantic success, right? And Sam also can't be too crazy raising against a minimum bet, because when Zhao does have a 5 or an ace, I gotta presume he's just gonna call it off, which is clearly not good. So that's gonna force Sam to play kind of straightforwardly against a bet. That said, I would have just checked here. That could certainly be wrong. I will always default to whatever Zhao says. I presume whatever he does is right, and I presume whatever Sam does is right. And this is an interesting hand, because I would have played this a little bit differently than they're both about to play it. So let's see what Zhao does. He's going to give it some thought. This is a very long hand history. We're going to end up fast forwarding a little bit once we get through to the river. Should I spoil it for you? He's going to bet the minimum. I like the play. I think it's fun. Probably good, strong GTO play. I think an obviously easier strategy to learn that probably doesn't leave a ton of money on the table is to go for a check and then just check call and try to induce bluffs. Because if you check, then you know you very clearly induce bluffs. Then you just have easy call-offs here. So anyway, he goes small. Over to Sam. I would have just called here, thinking that if I shove, Zhao's going to call with every 5, every ace. He's going to fold out whatever bluffs he has. And I really want to keep Zhao in with his bluffs, because I got to imagine Zhao's bluffs are probably going to be the low equity ones. Although maybe Zhao leaves here with really good draws. You just want to jam it immediately. That way he like has to call it off with the 7-6 suited of spades. I'm sorry, of hearts. Um, I would have just called here in Sam's shoes. I do know that as you get shallower stack, you should just be more inclined to put your money in. I know against small leads from good, strong, world-class players, you should be raising more often than you perhaps think you should. We actually discussed this concept recently at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/pokercoaching, where we go through a few leaks a lot of small and medium stakes players have, and that is that they just don't raise often enough. And this is a spot where I definitely think raising is viable, but so I know Joao likes to bluff. At least he likes to try to bluff me. Given Joao likes to try to bluff me, I in turn just want to give him every opportunity to bluff. But Sam does shove. So now, I want you to take a second and think about what you would do in Joao's shoes facing this all in. I can obviously see it's a chop because they both have ace, ace, 5, 5, 9. But what do we do here? We have a whopping 5 big blinds remaining. The next biggest stack is 19 big blinds. There are payout implications. Let's go back and show you the payout implications here. How many players are left in this tournament? There are 7 players left. So 7th place is $79,000. Sixth place is $99,000. So we're looking at a $20,000 payout jump. You may say that's a lot of money. It's 2 buy-ins. It's not all that much. What do we do? Do we call it off or do we fold? Pause the video and write what you would do in the comment section below. And while we're waiting for Joao, go ahead and click the like and subscribe button too. You don't need to pause the video because Joao's going to take his time. He's thinking. We'll fast forward. You should give it a lot of thought here. I'm sure what is going through his mind is, would Sam ever bluff in this spot where I clearly have a very, very premium portion of my range that I'm obviously never folding, right? If Joao does have a good ace, probably doesn't have all that many, but if he does have like ace 10, ace 9, he's never folding, right? If he has a 5, he's never folding. So, knowing Joao's not folding some decent chunk of his range, and knowing that if Joao is bluffing and Sam had a good hand, he really wants to keep him in the pot. It's a weird spot, right? Because Sam's essentially has to figure out if Joao's range is a little bit tilted towards value hands or bluffs. If it's heavily tilted towards bluffs, I think you just want to call. Like, this is why this is so weird, because I think Sam just wants to call here every time. But I mean, clearly I'm wrong, because this is what he did. Sam, if you're listening, I'd love your feedback on the spot. Because if I would have presumed Joao is going to be very polarized here. I don't think he's just like leading 100%. Maybe he's leading 100%. If he's leading 100%, I guess this becomes very reasonable. I don't know. What do you all like in the chat? In Sam's spot too. Weird spot, right? Weird hand. I would have just called it off here. Why? Because which hands from a logical reasoning point of view does Sam want to shove? Sam wants to shove with hands that lack showdown value, like draws, and hands that want protection, like weak ace. You chop against the weak ace, you are ahead of the draws. I would have called it off here. Pot odds exist, right? Payout implications, even though they exist, they're kind of minimal, because once you're down to 5 big blinds and the next shortest person that's 20, it's just not that big of a deal, right? Like, you're probably going broke next. So I think you just got to put it in here. It's unfortunate, but I think you just have to pay. So as you can see, I have very different thought processes than both these players in this hand, which, you know, maybe means I have a lot to learn. Whenever you are playing this very flat payout structure, things get very, very odd compared to when there are no payout implications, or when you're playing a more top-heavy tournament where the goal is to just like try to get a hold of a lot of the chips. If there was another shallow stack here, I would love... Well, I think folding would at least be reasonable. But look, I know Joao battles. I know Sam battles. Knowing both these players battle makes me think they're going to be bluffing adequately. And if they're bluffing adequately, I just do not see how you can fold this. Joao's giving it some thought. He's going to think for like another minute or two. Think. Think. Always give it thought. You have a time bank. Might as well use it. What does Joao do? My favorite poker player. He folds. He folds out the chop. Brutal. I mean, I get the idea of why you would fold, because which hands does Sam want to jam? Hands that are in okay shape against Joao's value range that he wants to get full value from, and also hands that don't really care if the opponent folds out high equity bluffs. But given Sam's opening perhaps wider than Joao realizes under the gun here, ace-3 offsuit, right? That means he's going to have probably ace-8, ace-7, ace-6, ace-4, ace-3, ace-2. All these hands that you chop with. And of course, you lose to ace-king, ace-queen, ace-jack, ace-10, which maybe played the exact same way. Maybe ace-king, ace-queen, ace-jack, and ace-10 call to keep Joao in the pot. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on with this hand. And that is why poker is a lot of fun. And I thoroughly enjoy watching these high-stakes tournaments on GG. You can watch these streams live. They take place on Tuesday at ggpoker.tv, so make sure you check those out. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comment section below. I would appreciate it. Also, do me a favor and click the like and subscribe buttons. Good luck in your games. Have a great, great day. Thanks for watching, Sharks, and I will talk to you next time. What's big, green, and gives you the freedom to do whatever you want? Yeah, it's money. And if you want to start your journey to a big pile of money, click the subscribe button right over here. See you in the next video.